You ever notice how a clock doesn't just tick, it taps? Little knuckles rapping on the door of your mind. A slow, steady knocking that says, hey, are you paying attention? Because something is slipping. And you pretend you don't hear it. You pretend it's just background noise like birds or traffic or your own blood humming in your ears. But once you really notice it, once you let that sound crawl around inside your head, it's over. The ticking turns into a countdown. The countdown turns into a threat. And the threat feels personal. This episode is all about that. The fear you don't name because naming it makes it real. Chronophobia. The quiet dread that time isn't just passing, but escaping. People talk about the fear of death all the time, like it's this grand theatrical thing. A shadowy monster with glowing eyes waiting at the end of the hallway. But the real fear isn't death. It's Tuesday. It's your birthday. It's opening your phone and seeing a photo from 7 years ago when you look younger, thinner, maybe even happier, and thinking, when did that person stop being me? It's the horrible suspicion that your life might be moving faster than your ability to live it. You can go days, weeks, months pretending you're fine, that you're keeping up, that the calendar on the wall is just a tool, not a reminder that you're losing a race no one asked you to run. But then something small happens. You glance at the date when you sign a form, you see the number on a scale, you find a grey hair, a wrinkle, a missed opportunity, a friend you haven't spoken to in a year. And there it is again, the tapping, the knocking, the reminder. Time doesn't just pass, it accumulates, and somewhere inside you a voice whispers, you're running out. Chronophobia isn't something people admit to. It's not fashionable like anxiety or poetic like existential dread. It's the fear that lives inside the spaces between things. The silence after someone asks, so what have you been doing with yourself lately? The pause when you realize you wasted another week. The moment you wake up and half your life feels used up and you can't remember spending it. We live in a world obsessed with seconds, atomic clocks accurate to the width of a hair, phones that tell you your screen time down to the minute, apps that remind you that you've been sitting too long or breathing too shallow or sleeping too poorly. Time used to be a river, something you floated down, letting the current guide you. Now it's a cage made of numbers, and you are the one holding the key, too scared to unlock the door because there might not be anything on the other side. Today, we are going to step into that fear. We're going to pick up the clock, crack it open, and look at the gears that have been grinding inside you your whole life. Because if you're afraid of time, you're not afraid of minutes or hours or days. You're afraid of yourself. And that is where we begin. 835. The strange thing about humans is that we didn't always fear time. There was a point in our very long, very messy species biography when time was just something that happened. The way weather happens, or hunger happens, or the way the local fox screams at 1 a.m. every night and you sit up panicked thinking, is that a fox or a person? Time was a fact, a backdrop, a stage set painted on the wooden boards of existence. It wasn't the villain of the story. It wasn't even a character. It was the lighting, the ambience, the atmosphere. Back then, our ancestors woke when the sky told them to, slept when darkness said, that's enough for today. They didn't count years, they didn't celebrate birthdays, they didn't stick 30 little boxes on a wall and use them to measure their self-worth. They lived inside what anthropologists call cyclical time, but what your average prehistoric cave dweller would probably have called life. The sun rose, the sun set, the moon bloomed, then shrank. Animals migrated, storms came and went. Winter curled its fingers around the earth and then let go. Everything looped, everything returned. Nothing was truly lost. It just transformed and waited for its next turn. In that world, death wasn't a deadline. It was a recycling program. In a cyclical world, nothing is gone forever because everything that departs eventually comes back around. Time is a wheel, not a line. Time is a flat circle. And wheels don't end, they just keep turning. Imagine how different your anxiety would be if you believed that your life wasn't heading toward a cliff but spiraling like a staircase, every turn bringing you back to a familiar view but on a different level. You wouldn't fear time, you participate in it. But then something happened, something that felt harmless at the start, like all the worst inventions do. A small thing, tiny thing, a spark that eventually burned down the entire psychological forest. We invented clocks. Well, first we invented agriculture, and that's when everything started to go wrong, because farming demands measurement, seasons, predictability, the kind of precision that doesn't exist in a world ruled by natural chaos. You can't have a harvest schedule if you live in the trustful rhythm of sticks and berries and wandering herds. You need dates, you need certainty, you need time to behave itself. So humans took this wild cosmic force, this river that flowed in every direction, and shoved it in a straight line. A line with a beginning, middle, and end. A line you can follow, a line you can judge yourself against. Civilization was born. And civilization is what happens when people stop trusting nature and start trusting numbers. We carved markings into bones. We counted moons. We invented calendars. We watched shadows crawl along sundials and pretended we were in control. But sundials are still romantic. They still whisper the illusion that time is written in light and shadow. The real shift, the fracture that split the species, came later. When some innovator, some clever lunatic with a workshop full of springs and gears created mechanical time. The clock. If you want to understand chronophobia, you have to understand clocks, because clocks did something to the human mind no predator or famine or war ever managed. They made us aware of the distance between who we are and who we are supposed to be. They made us measurable. Picture a medieval town before the bell tower. People worked when it was light, ate when they were hungry, slept when they were tired, laughed when something was funny. Pretty simple, pretty messy, pretty human. Now picture the same town after the bell tower. A giant iron heart beating above the rooftop, ringing out across cobblestones, telling everyone when to wake, when to pray, when to work, when to rest, when to live, and when to die. Suddenly, life wasn't instinctual anymore. It was scheduled, monitored, declared. Time wasn't a river anymore, it was a landlord, and the rent was due every hour. If you listen closely to the history of clocks, you can hear the first heartbeat of chronophobia echoing inside them. Because the moment time became uniform and external and mechanical, people stopped experiencing it and started observing it. They became separate from it, and separation breeds fear. It's like realizing you're standing outside your own body, watching yourself breathe, speak, stumble, sweat, and get older. You become the audience to your own existence, and nothing terrifies a person more than being forced to watch themselves deteriorate in real time. Mechanical clocks didn't just tell the time, they created it. Before them, life unfurled. After them, it marched. Fast forward a few centuries and machines need synchronization. Factories need shifts, trains need timetables. Employers need you to show up not at morning, but at like 8:58 or else you're late. Time tightens its grip. What was once a wheel becomes a conveyor belt, a steel track, a one-way street with speed limits and surveillance cameras. Chronophobia is the fear of the one-way street. It's the terror that the past is sealed shut, the future is barreling towards you, and the present is thinner than a razor blade, and you are trying to balance on it. Industrialization weaponized time. The dreaded time clock. Punch in, punch out, fuck you, Henry Ford. Your life becomes divisible into units of sellable labor. Every minute has a price tag. Suddenly, wasting time feels like wasting money, and wasting money feels like wasting life. Wasting life is like standing on the edge of a cliff, throwing handfuls of your own flesh into the wind. No wonder the fear was born. But chronophobia didn't exist in a world where time returned. It couldn't. You can't fear something that comes back around. You fear something that ends. You fear a line. And that is the tragedy of the human mind. We traded the circle for the line, and the line brought progress and industry and technology and medicine and rockets and economies and infrastructure and globalization, all of the goodies stacked in the supermarket of modern life. But the line also brought the countdown, the rush, the anxiety, the relentless internal audit, the sense that everything you do has to be justified because your time is limited and valuable and slipping. Our ancestors didn't have panic attacks about turning 30 or 40. They weren't doing, if they made it to 40, fucking good on them. They weren't doing mental arithmetic on how many productive years they had left. They weren't comparing their accomplishments to the invisible leaderboard of their peers. They weren't haunted by the sense that they were behind, because in a circle there is no behind, there is only the rotation. Chronophobia is the psychological hangover of linear time. It's the side effect of a species that invented clocks without inventing the emotional tools to handle what those clocks would do to their souls. It is the ache of living inside a countdown when your biology still secretly expects a cycle. This is the monster we built for ourselves. Not time, not death, but the story we tell about them. A story with a beginning, middle, and end, and no way to go back. It is the grief of losing the world where time wasn't something you could waste. Time wasn't something you could fail, and time wasn't something you could run out of. And now here we are, living inside this mechanical mythology, terrified of the machine we built because it reflects something we are too ashamed to admit. We are terrified that our lives have become too linear to forgive, too measurable to hide, and too finite to ignore. Time became a monster the moment we forced it to behave, and ever since, it's been hunting us. There is a sick joke baked into our century. We built machines to give us more time, and all they did was teach us how to fear it. Look around your house, your office, your gym, your car, your wrist. Every screen, every device has a clock embedded in it like a parasite. The oven, the microwave, the TV, your phone, your washing machine, your fucking thermostat. Even your fridge has the time now and fucking adverts, because apparently the human race has reached a point where we can't make a piece of toast without knowing exactly how minutes we have until we're late for the next fucking thing. This is the awful everywhere of clocks, the total occupation of our environment by timekeeping. Time has become wallpaper, infrastructure, a companion you never invited but can't evict because it's on the lease now. And the fear, it's not born from the ticking, it's born from the visibility. To live today is to be bombarded with timestamps. Your screen time this week was up 14%. You slept 5 hours and 22 minutes. Your order will arrive in 16 seconds. You've been sitting down for half an hour. Stand the fuck up! Modern life is a barrage of reminders that you are failing. Not dramatically, not theatrically, just slowly, quietly, incrementally. Failing in microscopic doses that add up to a lifetime of self-interrogation. Every timestamp is like a little mirror, and everyone asks, what have you done with the time I just measured? Long before anyone said it out loud, there was the first symptom of chronophobia. The realization that time used to be external, and now it's internal. Clocks used to live on buildings, now they live in your nervous system. Think about your phone. This rectangular anxiety grenade that you keep within arm's reach like it's an oxygen tank and you're deep-sea diving. You pick it up without thinking, you unlock it without meaning to. You check the time even when you don't need to, and every time you do, your brain bookmarks the moment as evidence. Evidence of your productivity or lack thereof. Evidence of your youth, your aging. Evidence of how much of the day has slipped away and how little of it you've actually lived. The more we surrounded ourselves with clocks, the more we created a world where presence is impossible. How can you be present when you're constantly aware of the exact second that you are in? That might sound like a contradiction, but bear with me on this. It is a thing that philosophers never warned us about, that the hyper-measurement of life leads to the hyper-awareness of mortality. The more granular our timekeeping becomes, the more terrifying time feels. It's not just flowing anymore, it's being monitored, analysed, graphed and judged. Every clock is a critic, and the worst critic of all is the smartwatch. That thin strap of silicon wrapped around your wrist like a fucking handcuff. The thing that vibrates when you've been sitting too long, or when your heart rate spikes, or when it senses you've been doom scrolling again. The thing that congratulates you for walking 5,000 steps like you're some Pavlovian hamster being rewarded for running on a wheel. Behind the tech optimism and the sleek marketing is the idea that the smartwatch doesn't track your health, it tracks your compliance. Turns your entire day into a performance review. People will say that it is there to help them, and of course it is, in the same way a parole officer is there to help you reintegrate. It is still surveillance. It still records your motions. It still tells you when you're doing enough, or not enough, or too much. It measures the value of your existence in steps, beats, calories, and minutes. The same units that employers use, except for calories. I don't think anyone measures my performance in calories. The same units that insurers might use, and the same units that advertisers might use. Time has become the currency of your self-worth. This is why chronophobia lives today like mold in a sealed basement. Our environment has turned time into something oppressive, something inescapable, that follows you from room to room like a debt collector. Even in places where you used to be free from measurement, the wilderness, the night sky, a quiet walk, the clock is still in your pocket, still glowing and still waiting for your attention, a digital leash disguised as convenience. And the most disturbing part is how normal it feels now. Time invaded our spaces so gradually we barely noticed the occupation. First the wall clocks, then the wristwatches, then digital displays and phones and wearables and apps. Now we have AI scheduling assistants that tell you when to blink, when to hydrate, and when to phone your mum. And somehow we think this is progress, that the path to freedom involves being managed by more and more machines. We didn't gain control over time. Time gained control over us. Every notification is a tug on the leash. Every timestamp is a reminder of the one thing you cannot escape, the fact that you are aging in real time, measured down to the millisecond. You don't get to drift anymore. You don't get to lose yourself. You don't get to forget the passage of time. We've built a world where forgetting is impossible. This is the awful everywhere, where time is omnipresent, a god made of numbers. And a God that isn't content to watch from a distance. He wants to intervene, correct, nudge, discipline, structure, optimize, optimize, optimize. And all of us are kneeling before it, tapping notifications like prayer beads, whispering the same mantra over and over. I don't have enough time. But it's not that you don't have enough. It's that the measurement has made you believe it. The more granular the measurement, the more inadequate the human being feels. We are not built for precision. We are built for rhythm, instinct, cycles, the pulse of the world. Chronophobia is the inevitable byproduct of a species that tried to conquer time and ended up drowning in it. When time is everywhere, fear becomes everywhere. The fear of lateness, of aging, of wasting time, of missing out, of falling behind. The fear of watching the seconds die in front of you faster than you can live them. This is the cost of putting a clock in every room, every device, and every moment. Time has become a constant reminder of exactly how mortal we are. We wonder why we're so fucking anxious. Chronophobia is the fear that you've squandered your existence, that you've already wasted too much, that you're too late to become the person you were supposed to be. Time isn't a monster, you are. And every second that passes shines a light on that fact like you're trapped under a spotlight in some interrogation room built by your own subconscious. This is the fear of wasted time, and it drips into everything. Think about guilt. Not loud cinematic guilt that comes from ruining a relationship or crashing a car or shouting something you can't take back. The guilt I'm talking about is quieter, stickier. The guilt of the unattempted, the unfinished, the undone. It's the novel you'll write someday, the fitness routine you'll start on Monday, the career move you'll make next year. All of those delayed promises that calcify over time into a kind of emotional plaque. The more you postpone, the more you choke. People will never admit that they don't regret what they did. They regret the timeline they didn't live. And the mind, cruel as a bored god, loves to torture you with alternate realities. Everyone knows this. We're all haunted by the multiverse inside our heads. The version of you who took a different job, married someone else, stayed in school, left earlier, raised your standards or lowered your guard. The you who wasn't afraid, wasn't tired. Chronophobia feeds on those ghosts. It dines on them because every time you think about the road you didn't take, the clock tightens its grip around your throat. Suddenly time isn't a neutral force anymore. It becomes proof that you've already failed in 1,000 invisible ways. It's like this. Your life is a field, and every decision you didn't make is a crop you never planted. Now you're walking through acres of barren soil, kicking dust, trying not to look at your empty hands. You tell yourself you'll plant something tomorrow, next week, next season. But the truth is that the fear grows faster than anything you could farm. People call this procrastination. That is the polite word, the word that makes it sound like a scheduling problem. What procrastination really is grief. The grief of knowing you might not get another chance, of seeing time sprint ahead of you while you stand blinking in the doorway, paralyzed. The grief of realizing that potential has an expiration date and sometimes it expires before you're ready to open it. This is the quiet horror of the modern human condition. We measure our worth by what we haven't done yet. If you want proof, you can look at the way people talk about age, turning 40 or 50, each one treated like a cliff you fall off. And we do this because every milestone becomes a scoreboard. You look at your age, then look at your list of unfinished dreams, and a panic writes itself. This is the dread of realizing that your timeline doesn't match the fantasy, like reaching the third act of your life and discovering the script is suddenly blank. But the deepest layer of this fear isn't about what you haven't done. It's about the kind of person you imagine you should be. People don't fear time running out. They fear becoming someone they no longer recognize. You know this moment. You're scrolling through old photos and you see a version of yourself who looks happier, brighter, less complicated. A person with more future than past, and you think, God, what happened to that kid? There's a reason nostalgia hurts, and it's not longing for the past, it's mourning the person who lived there. It is the grief of self-loss. Time doesn't kill you, it erases you bit by bit and leaves behind some version you barely recognize. And the shame is realizing you helped in the erasing, you hurried it along, through fear, through avoidance, through all the ways you chose comfort over becoming. This is where regret metastasizes into panic, because once you start cataloging everything you haven't done, the friendships you drifted from, the skills you never developed, the risks you avoided, time becomes this enormous ledger hovering above your life, a cosmic accountant flipping pages, tapping the numbers and frowning, and you are left explaining yourself to no one but the hollow ache in your own chest. And yes, you can try to outrun it, everyone does. You bury yourself in distractions, work, entertainment, relationships, the endless day-to-day mundane rituals that feel urgent but mean nothing. You convince yourself that being busy is the same as being alive, but deep down behind that noise, the truth clings to your ribs. You've been playing on the surface of life, afraid to dive because you don't know how far down the floor is now. This is the emotional root of chronophobia, the terror that you missed your moment. And maybe you did. That's the horrifying part, isn't it? Not all opportunities come back around. Some doors close quietly, some windows lock, and some versions of you die without ceremony. The timeline you never chose becomes a corpse you have to carry. But most of the shame isn't about the past. It's about the future. The fear that the past predicts the future. That the way you've lived until now proves you'll never change. That you'll keep wasting time the way you always have. And someday someone will pick up the pieces of your life and say, what the fuck did they even do here? That's what people are really afraid of. Not that they wasted time, but that they will continue to waste it. Fear becomes shame, shame becomes paralysis, and paralysis becomes this slow, suffocating sense that your life is drifting out of your hands while you watch. This fear exists somewhere beneath the panic, because you still believe your life could be different, that the person you were supposed to become still exists somewhere, waiting, that the timeline you abandoned still has a pulse. Chronophobia is not the fear of running out of time. Chronophobia is the fear that you might still have enough time to change and no idea where to begin. The great cosmic joke is that you can optimize your life until your calendar looks like a Mondrian painting, and you'll still feel like you're behind. You can buy every productivity book, every planner, every digital tool promising to make you a high-performance version of yourself, and you will still wake up with the same breathless panic that you're wasting your one shot at existence. Productivity does not cure chronophobia. Productivity is chronophobia dressed up like a gym coach, shouting motivational slogans, whilst quietly feeding your fear with whey protein and screeching about dem gains. Look at modern life. We don't live anymore. We manage, we schedule, we plan. It's like we've all been tricked into running the world's most depressing marathon, except there is no finish line, just checkpoints and KPIs where we get graded on how efficiently we move from one suffering to the next. It starts small, innocent. You download a habit tracker because, of course, adults need digital stickers now to feel proud of themselves. Then you get a calendar app with reminders. Then a second app because the first one doesn't integrate with your to-do list. Then you get a smartwatch because the apps start whispering that you're falling behind compared to other users. Soon, your life is a symphony of alarms and alerts and buzzes and taps. Eventually, you are not living through time. You are sprinting from one notification to the next like a lab rat chasing dopamine crumbs. And the worst part is that we think this is improvement. We mistake it for discipline, that this is like growing up. Meanwhile, the clock you're trying to beat is watching you with this smug cosmic grin. Oh, sweet child, you think you're winning. Welcome to the productivity illusion. Look at them shine. The psychological trap where you convince yourself that managing time is the same thing as valuing it. Productivity culture sells this fantasy that if you can just organize yourself enough, you will finally outrun your fear. You'll get ahead. You will escape that awful sense of slipping. So you become a kind of clerical worker inside your own skull, filing thoughts, scheduling feelings, color-coding your aspirations. It becomes this whole interior bureaucracy. Look at the modern morning routine. I've lost track of how many different ones there are now. It used to be wake up, drink something that has caffeine in it, go outside, do life. I mean, that's kind of how I do things. Now it's a militarized self-improvement ritual. You wake up at 5. I don't, by the way. You wake up at 5. You make your bed because you need discipline. You meditate for clarity. You journal your mindset. Have a cold shower because you need that fucking grit, right? Then there's a protein shake breakfast, a 5K run, some gratitude practice for spiritual enlightenment, and 10 pages of dense non-fiction to get 1% better at something you don't care about but feel obligated to master because some fucker on YouTube said it changed their life. That's your morning. Well, I mean, it might be. It's not mine. Fuck that shit. Productivity culture doesn't make people disciplined. It makes them exhausted. It makes them obsessed with their own metrics and terrified of being ordinary. Chronophobia fucking loves this. Productivity is just fuel for the fear. Every reminder to smash your goals is really a whisper. You haven't done enough yet. Every rise and grind quote is another way of saying time is running out. Now, I'm just going to be very clear. Please put rise and grind in the comments and see what happens. No, I'm not. Like, I fucking hate, in all seriousness, I fucking hate that term so much. It's such a bullshit phrase, rise and grind. If I like, it's one of the reasons that I basically quit LinkedIn, because if I saw some more fucking idiot going rise and grind and do some bullshit fucking Andrew Tate nonsense, I was going to just put my computer out of the window and then go and walk into the woods and never come back. Where was I? Fucking crash out complete. But the real twist, what's the real twist? What's the real twist? Productivity culture doesn't make you efficient. There you are. I agree with that. It makes you anxious. And anxious people are compliant, and they like to spend money, and they like to follow orders. Anxious people like systems and authorities to tell them how to live because they are terrified of choosing for themselves. It turns people into consumers, desperate ones. You don't just buy notebooks, you buy systems. You don't keep a schedule, you curate a workflow, because, that sounds better, right? You become like this walking software suite. But time cannot be organized out of existence. No matter how nicely you package your days, time still rots. Moments still slip. You still age and the clock still wins. And the terrible truth hiding under all of this self-optimization is that productivity culture teaches you to view yourself as a machine, a system, a little engine of growth like Thomas the fucking Dank Engine, a resource to be allocated and a set of outputs to be maximized. Machines, of course, don't fear death, but they do break. And that leads us on to the burnout epidemic. Like, epidemic is probably the wrong word, but you know what I mean. The people who treat life like a performance review until their soul hits his own version of factory default settings and shuts down. These are the people staring at their perfectly organized calendars with dead eyes, wondering why every hour feels like a sandbag strapped to their chest. The illusion, of course, is simple. If you manage time perfectly, you finally feel worthy. But the equation is broken because the more you manage, the more time expands into some monstrous shape that you can't keep up with. You look at your schedule and instead of seeing structure, you see failure. Miss one task and suddenly the whole week is a fucking disaster. And then it happens, that sudden emotional spiral where a tiny slip becomes an existential crisis. You didn't wake up early enough. You didn't finish your reading. You didn't tick the right box. You didn't hit your step goal. You useless fucking fuck! And now you feel like you've betrayed yourself, like you've sabotaged your timeline. And that person you want to become is slipping further and further away into the distance. The irony is that I'm done. The irony is that productivity culture sells control, but the only thing it really controls is you. It convinces you that you are running the show while time drags you along by the collar, selling you planners and apps and workflows and optimization gurus, all promising you a path to mastery. But what they never say is that the real fear isn't that we'll waste time. The real fear is that we'll spend so much time managing our lives that we forgot to actually live them. We are terrified of being unproductive, terrified of being idle, of being unremarkable, so we turn our days into spreadsheets. We treat rest as a failure state. We turn leisure into something we have to justify. A hobby becomes a side hustle. Curiosity becomes skills development. And childhood wonder just gets bastardized into self-investment. Life becomes a form of fucking labour. Essentially, you become this wound that won't stop reopening, this never-ending staircase, a cursor blinking on a document titled My Life with fuck all on it. Time becomes an adversary, you become an employee, and fear becomes your supervisor. This is the great tragedy of our era. We have replaced living with optimizing. We've replaced presence with efficiency and meaning with output. We traded soul for schedule. Chronophobia is the fear of a life lived in service of time, a life where every second needs to justify its existence. A life where you measure yourself by how well you conquer a clock. Nearly said it, nearly slipped. Well, a life where you measure yourself by how well you conquer a clock that was never conquerable in the first place. This is the treadmill we're all sprinting on. I've lost it today. This is the illusion and this is the trap. And the faster you run, the more time stays exactly where it is, which is far ahead and closing in. The only way out of the panic is to stop running. But stopping feels like death. Stopping feels like surrender, like admitting that you can't outpace time, can't negotiate with it, can't stuff it in a container and label it optimized. Stopping forces you to face the truth that time isn't something coming towards you, it's something moving through you. And that's terrifying, because we've been trained to treat time like a predator instead of a habitat. The strange, uncomfortable psychological click is when you finally realize that time isn't hunting you, it's carrying you. And the fear only exists because somewhere along the way we forgot how to float. We all float down here. The fear of time isn't cured by control or optimization or becoming more disciplined. Those are just new cages, different wallpaper. The real reconciliation comes from collapsing the illusion that you and time are two separate things locked in some cosmic arm wrestling match. You are not wrestling time, you are made of time. Every cell in your body is an act of time sculpting matter into a temporary expression of consciousness. Every breath is time moving in and out of you like a tide. You are not against the river, you are the river. Now this is the bit that the ego doesn't like, because the ego wants to win, it wants to count victories and maintain the illusion that it is the one steering the ship. But if you listen closely, there is this quieter, older part of you, that part that existed long before calendars and clocks and expectations, and it knows the truth. It knows that you are not supposed to conquer time, you are supposed to remember your place inside it. Chronophobia dissolves when you stop trying to dominate the current and start letting the current tell you who you are. Call it acceptance, surrender, presence if you want to be spiritual about it. Call it giving up if you want to fuck off those productivity gurus. In the end, it is all the same thing. Acceptance is throwing your hands up and saying, I'm not playing this game anymore. It is choosing to live the moment rather than measure it. It is allowing yourself to be a process instead of a performance. This is what every ancient tradition was trying to tell us in its own poetic language. The Buddhists said it through breath, the Stoics said it through impermanence, the Taoists through water, indigenous cultures said it through seasons, rituals, migrations. And modern psychology, at least the parts of it that haven't been hijacked by productivity culture, says it through mindfulness. But all of it points to one revelation. Time becomes monstrous only when you insist on being separate from it. Think about the last time you were truly present. You didn't notice the seconds. You didn't notice the ticking. You weren't thinking about the next thing or the last thing. You weren't calculating, evaluating, or judging. You were not an employee of your own life. You were just there, living. In those moments, the fear disappears, not because time stops, but because your mind stepped out of its own shadow. Presence isn't about slowing down. It's about stepping into your life rather than chasing it. And presence doesn't require enlightenment or incense or a meditation retreat in the mountains. It requires something simpler and far more brutal. Honesty. The honesty to accept that time is going to move whether you panic or not. That you can waste your life measuring your life, or you can choose to actually live it. People think that acceptance means giving up ambition and abandoning goals and drifting through existence like a dandelion in a breeze. But acceptance isn't apathy. Acceptance is clarity. It is recognizing that fear never created anything worthwhile. Panic never produced meaning. Chronophobia has never helped anyone become who they want to be. It only kept them trapped in cycles of guilt and self-improvement theatre. When you stop fighting time, you stop fighting yourself. And suddenly, the future stops feeling like a test. It starts feeling like a landscape. Of course, presence isn't passive. It's actually what creates momentum. It's what builds lives worth living. The person who is awake to their own existence does not need alarms or timers or productivity hacks to feel alive. They don't need to micromanage every hour to justify their presence on the planet. They act from alignment, not fear, from intention, not urgency. Once you reconcile with time, your decisions become cleaner. You don't chase opportunities because you fear missing out. You choose them because they matter. You don't grind yourself into dust because you're terrified of falling behind. You rest because you understand rest is part of the rhythm. Your life stops being a countdown and it becomes a conversation. Time isn't the enemy, and the fear isn't the flaw. Chronophobia is a signal. It is the psyche's way of saying you've been living outside yourself for too long, that you've been sprinting on the surface instead of sinking into the depth, and you've been mistaking activity for meaning. Time is not a thief. It's a collaborator. It gives direction and structure and urgency. It gives the boundary that makes every moment precious. If life were infinite, nothing would matter. If time never ran out, you'd never choose. And if everything returned forever, loss would be impossible and therefore meaningless. Chronophobia is a distortion. Presence is the correction. And reconciliation doesn't mean you stop caring about the future. It doesn't mean you abandon growth. It means you grow from reality, not fear. It means the past stops feeling like a graveyard and the future stops feeling like a threat. You stop trying to manage your time like a hostile animal and start walking beside it like a companion. Now imagine this. You are standing in a river, not drowning, not fighting, just standing. The water is cold but gentle. It wraps around your ankles. It carries leaves past your legs. You realize the river isn't rushing you. It's holding you, supporting you, flowing whether you move or not. And all you have to do is breathe. All you have to do is be. Time isn't chasing you. Time is carrying you forward. And once you understand that, chronophobia loses its teeth. It goes from a monster to a reminder. You are alive right now in this moment. And that, the awareness of that, is what makes every second worth living. So here we are, back where we started. The ticking, that slow, rhythmic reminder that time is moving whether you're ready for it or not. Except now the sound doesn't feel like someone tapping on the inside of your skull. Now it feels like something else, something gentler, something you could almost call a heartbeat if you stop trying to outpace it. Chronophobia always pretends to be about running out of time, but it's really about running out of yourself. It's the fear that you've spent too long living inside your own shadow, chasing a future that hasn't happened yet, dragging a past that refuses to stay dead. It's what happens when you start treating your life like a project instead of a place, a series of deadlines instead of a landscape. a countdown instead of a conversation. But the truth, the one that we've circled for this entire episode, is simpler and harder than anything the clocks have been telling you. You were never meant to conquer time, you were meant to inhabit it, not from the outside, but from the center. Think about that river again, the one you've been fighting your whole life, the one you thought would drown you if you ever stopped swimming. That river was never trying to kill you, it was trying to carry you forward. And you, in all your panic and guilt and anxiety, were the one clawing at the water like it was an enemy instead of a home. The moment you stop fighting time, time stops fighting you. Maybe that's a lesson hidden inside all this fear. The clocks aren't villains, the days aren't threats, and the calendar isn't a judge. They are just tools, symbols, ways of reminding you that the present isn't infinite, and that's exactly why it matters. If time stretches forever, nothing has weight, nothing has urgency, nothing has meaning. The countdown is the thing that sharpens the edges of your life. The finiteness is what gives it shape. Chronophobia tries to convince you that time is slipping away, but truthfully, time is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. The question isn't whether you can stop it. You can't. The question is whether you're willing to show up inside it. Not in the fantasy of who you could have been or the dread of who you might become, but in the version of yourself that's breathing in this exact second. Your life isn't behind you, and your life isn't ahead of you. Your life is happening right now and is asking you to participate. Maybe that's the antidote to chronophobia. Not a cure, not a fix. Just an invitation to stop standing outside your own existence like a critic and to stop managing time like a frightened employee. You are here, you are alive, and for the tiny slice of eternity that those facts are true, that is enough. Time isn't the enemy, fear is. So step into your life. The river is already moving. All that's left is to let it carry you. Thank you, you beautiful lot, for giving your time, your actual finite, precious time to this episode. Your attention, awareness, and presence are always deeply appreciated. If this episode hit something real for you, if it cracked the surface, if it made you pause for half a second and look at time differently, then I'm pleased to hear it. The whole point of this is not to give answers or to sell neat little philosophies, but to nudge you toward the uncomfortable places where the real questions live. If you want to keep wandering through those questions with me, you can follow the show on all the usual suspects. We are on Instagram, TikTok, and X with the handle at the Observing Eye. We are on Substack at theobservingeye.com, which is the main home of the website, and we are on YouTube, which is youtube.com/@theobservingeye, along with all of the usual podcast places, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, etc. And if you found something in the episode that stayed with you, then share it. Send it to someone who's sprinting through their days like they're being chased by a clock with large teeth. Or give us a comment, if you like, want to be less metaphorical about it, drop your comments. Let us know what you think and ask questions. I'm always up for asking questions. That is it from me this week. No, it's not. One last thing. Just one more thing, Columbo. Yeah, the days have changed to Tuesday now. We are going out on Tuesday, not Sundays, because it gives me a little bit more. I know it doesn't give me more time. It changes the day, which kind of gives me psychologically more time because I don't have to spend my entire Sunday doing it. I have other days before. It makes sense to me, so just bear with me. But the podcast is coming out on Tuesday now rather than Sunday, as you probably have guessed if you're following along and noticed the day's change. Now that's everything from me. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.